Hello and welcome to another conversation about conversations. I am your co-host Jacob Kubrak. With me, as always, is the man, the myth, the legend, the author, the podcaster of Conversations About Conversations, Ivan Farber, our lady legend, Jules Swisher, and an upcoming legend in podcasting, Mr. Adam Fallert.
Welcome to the show, Adam.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Pleasure to be with both of you, all three of you. Thank you.
Second take on that, but that's okay. We're working out the kinks.
You're not supposed to tell them it's a second take.
Yeah, that's okay.
For all the people out there, we're keeping it real. That was the second take.
Yeah, the people need to know that we're not perfect all the time. We make mistakes. Sometimes Ivan asks the wrong question in a conversation.
Yes, that happens a lot.
Yeah.
Well, isn't that the best part of having a podcast? Is it's a little bit raw and it's about real conversation. So
yeah,
here we are.
Absolutely. Tell us a little bit about your project.
Yeah. So I launched the PowerFall Project with a very good friend, Nick Powers. It's a little bit of a play on our names. His last name is Powers. My last name is Fallert. So the PowerFall Project. Yeah, a little bit of a stretch there, but we're going with it. We like it. So
never would have guessed it. Ever.
Yeah. So, I mean, we started that with the idea that, as I've said to you all, but the purpose was in time of COVID, things like that. Life's not the same. Where I'm not commuting to work like I was. I don't have my buddies next to me at the cubicles, and I'm not grabbing a beer with my buddy on Friday nights. So we needed something to keep that going, those conversations, even if it's just lighthearted. If it's serious, great. But if it's lighthearted, awesome. And we needed that. And so we were doing it like normal on the phone. So we figured, you know what? Let's just hit record. So it started out as just a fun thing, and then it became what it is today. So and it's building and it's exciting. So thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's one of the greatest things about, some people like to refer to as sanity, is everything keeps rolling and now you get to record, and we can all be legends of podcasting along the way.
Right.
And it's good stuff. Ivan, what do you have for us?
Well, I just want to say for Adam, I really enjoyed the top 5 Jim Carrey movies episode. And I do plan to listen to all your episodes. Luckily, you don't have as many episodes as I have. So I should be able to get through them, but it's a lot of fun with you and Nick. It's a good podcast.
Thank you. That was a fun one. That was our first actual episode. We did a pilot episode, then we started trying to figure out what our format was going to be. So I do appreciate that. Right now we are at 11 episodes. We drop it weekly. It's about an hour long. And I just got notification yesterday that we've hit 500 downloads on 11 episodes. So, things are going the way that we want it to. And we didn't really have necessarily big goals going into this thing. And now it's becoming something that we really look forward to every week. So
that's awesome. Speaking of 5, this show got to 5,000 downloads this week.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And as a celebratory present for myself, I got a new mic. I went with the Blue Yeti.
Wow.
Because I had microphone envy from our guest Patrick Galvin a few weeks back, because he had the Blue Yeti and he sounded like this and we sounded like this. So I'm excited to share my Blue Yeti with y'all.
Well, you sound great.
I started saying y'all, not sure why.
Okay.
Never lived in the South.
Adam definitely has a voice for podcasting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
That's why you have so many downloads already, my friend. You got like
So
liquid
soothing.
gold coming out of those vocal cords. Yeah. I mean, it's just smooth. It's easy. It's like, it sounds like you've been podcasting your whole life. So,
well, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Today's topic is how to agree with friends and influence people. How to agree with friends and influence people.
Step 1, figure out Adam's voice and replicate that. And then that makes the conversation so much easier. And then from there, Just ask good questions. I'm going to go with.
That's it. The episode's over. Thanks,
All
Jacob.
right.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you,
All right,
Adam.
guys.
My pleasure.
So here's the 4 items on the agenda. Number 1, we're going to look into the nature of disagreement. We're going to look into the problems that disagreement causes, what to do when you find yourself disagreeing with somebody, and then your formula or your secrets for gaining agreement and influencing others. That's it. That's our map that we're heading.
Tone falls in there somewhere.
Tone. Yes. Well, let's talk first about the nature of disagreement. So when do you find yourself in a disagreement with somebody? Let's start with our guest thinking about disagreement. Adam.
Okay. So when there's usual disagreement, there is either a lack of understanding, a difference in values, or your goals aren't in line, right? I mean, those are as basic as it gets, but it comes down to the motivation of why you feel a certain way. And if those two things vary between two people, there can be a disagreement. So I think that's kind of your root cause.
How does it feel when you're in a disagreement with someone else?
Well, it doesn't always have to be completely negative, right? I mean, if you're in a disagreement with somebody, you can learn a ton from them. You might understand that your understanding or what you're agreeing with is on uneven footing, or it's not exactly what you think it is. So in a disagreement with somebody, you can strengthen your own argument as well as really understanding where they're coming from.
How easy is it to influence someone who you disagree with?
I don't think that depends on what you can do as much as depends on how much that person can change. I'm sorry. Step back.
No, no, I think it completely depends, right? So like if you are in a disagreement with someone about something very small or trivial, it doesn't really matter at all. If it's something that is, take for instance, politics or something that you're absolutely, entrenched in, it can make your blood boil. So I would say it's a huge scale.
Jules, let's get your opinion on disagreement.
Yeah, so I would find that my most common disagreements, and I have a little bit of a filter when I notice I'm in a disagreement, which is doesn't matter. And if it doesn't matter, I just say, okay, and walk away. Like trivial stuff, whatever. If I realize that this is trivial, that it has no effect on my life or my business, whether or not you agree with me, then I just walk away. Now, when I'm in a business setting and it does matter, that it's going to impact my business if I can't gain your agreement on something, that's where I will dive in a little bit. And it, like Adam said, I mean, it's kind of like either our goals aren't aligned, either there's a misunderstanding or a lack of understanding on either part, whether it be my part or their part. And then maybe a difference in motivation. So I see this a lot in like a client that I'm working with has a totally different motivation than what I have, and trying to get those aligned can be a little tricky. But how does it feel when I'm in a disagreement? I would say at first there's always some discomfort, and that's like a trigger emotion for me. So when I start feeling uncomfortable, I can recognize, okay, there's a disagreement here. And I just need to sit and lean into that and not like shy. It's really easy when we feel uncomfortable to try to like skirt around that conversation or just move on. But it's important to address it in a way that doesn't feel too confrontational, because I don't want to turn it into like an argument if it's just a disagreement. So I have to really watch myself because I have tendencies to get a little aggressive. So I have to watch that and lean into that. So that's like when I get uncomfortable, I know that I'm in a disagreement and I need to stay here and sit with that and just like accept the fact that I feel a little uncomfortable and then like address it,
You feel the aggression coming on when
Oh
you
God, yes.
experiencing, yeah.
The Hulk.
Yeah. I just turn into a shark by nature, like just and I have to watch that. So
One thing I like that you said, Jules, was that you evaluate, is this worth it? Is this worth being upset about? And use that as your filter.
Mhm.
What I've found is there are four main problems with having disagreement come up in conversation with others. Number one, it breaks rapport right away. Like if you had some kind of collegiality, you're having fun with someone, boom, you disagree, it can just break the rapport. And then it like drains the energy out of the room.
Mhm.
Number two, by definition, when you're agreeing with someone, there isn't a consensus. And so it puts you on the exact opposite side of the table. So you go from being on the same side of the table in rapport to being on the opposite side of the table. It creates this right, wrong, agree, disagree dynamic that is really hard to get out of.
Mhm.
And I think, and as I thought about this episode, it's really hard to influence when you have a basis of disagreement. So first off, I wanted to do a play on Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. And I had all sorts of different ideas about it, but how to agree is really important because as I thought about it more and more, it's how you influence people.
Mhm.
Adam, how do you get someone to agree with you?
Yeah, well, to kind of piggyback off of what Jacob said, I think you have to start with the disagreement part, right? So you have to understand, well, before I get you to agree with me, I better understand what we're disagreeing about. And I think that comes down to that root cause, the motivation, what is causing them to feel that way, right? So simple example, let's say my wife and I disagree on what ice cream we should buy. And if she's a vanilla person and I'm saying, no, we need mint chocolate chip. If our disagreement, to get her to agree with me that we need mint chocolate chip in our freezer, I need to understand why she likes vanilla. And if it's like, well, I like the color, cool, then we start there. If it's because every Friday during the summer, she would make ice cream with her grandfather and her grandfather calls her vanilla bean, that's a completely different disagreement than I like mint chocolate chip, you like vanilla, cool. So if I wanted her to agree with me that we need some mint chocolate chip in our freezer, I would say, oh my gosh, well, that is phenomenal. And I don't want to get in the way of that relationship and that understanding. And that is a very, very cool, deep rooted thing that you have. And that is special. And I don't want to get in the way of that. So let's make a compromise and say we are vanilla eaters during the summer. But as we're getting into the fall, I need a little bit of variety. I want to make some of our own traditions and I want some of our own memories. So let's start doing chocolate chip in the fall or mint chocolate chip, whatever I chose for an example. So I think understanding what the motivation behind what their thought process is, what their root cause in thinking a certain way helps you in helping to influence a possible decision, in the future.
That's smooth. You're smooth.
Great illustration.
Thanks.
I have a colleague at work who is just inclined to disagree always. He always just starts from disagreement. And it reminds me of a distinction I learned many, many years ago in Tony Robbins' book, Unlimited Power, that you have people who start off and they look for what's the same. They look to agree right away. It's sameness. Then you have people that are sameness with an exception. Then you have people who are differences focused or differences, and then they'll tell you what they accept. So what I always, whenever I'm talking with him, he always disagrees, and we've learned about that in our own conversations. To say, okay, that's your automatic instinct is to disagree. And of course, we all know people on the spectrum, for people who in our lives, they always disagree. That's where they always start. Maybe they find the exception after, or they're just always disagreeing. And so for those people, they have to agree with people. They have to overcome that initial instinct.
It's a tough way to go. Always disagreeing with things.
I disagree.
Where would you put yourself, Jacob, on that spectrum of sameness, sameness with exception, disagreement, disagreement with exception?
It really depends on the topic. I mean, and what I'm trying to move positively through life. So again, just trying to avoid icebergs, big ones, little ones, not even worth it. But yeah, somewhere down the middle, I guess.
Down the middle. Jules,
Yeah.
how about you?
I always start by looking for similarities versus differences. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm looking to agree. Like, I would probably not consider myself a super agreeable type of person, but I start from, even when I disagree with somebody, I look for the similarities and figure out where we are on the same page with and where we're not, and being able to distinguish those things. I'm also, I think, when I think about like, how do I gain agreement with somebody? And earlier I talked about the aggression that kind of comes out naturally for me by default when I'm not like in pilot mode. Like if I'm just in neutral, I will get aggressive. And I think that's because one of the things that's helped me is like when I encounter a disagreement, I have to let go of my absolute need to be right. Because people can sense that, and I can still let go of that need and know what I want, and like still have my end goals in mind, but not like immediately go into a disagreement trying to change that person's mind on something. And I think when people sense that you're open, then they're more willing to come around and also reciprocate that openness. And to me, that's where I've seen the most movement come in my life. And when I'm aggressive, it's because I need to be right. And that's so not cute for anyone. And when I find myself doing that, I'm like, hang on, like, why don't I like dive in and like try to understand this person and figure out what's going on, and not come through with this aggressive demeanor of like, you're wrong, I'm right. So that's been something that's been helpful for me.
Solid points.
Yeah, good
Do
answer.
you think that you can change other people?
On what level?
Do you think you can change other people?
In their
Broad question.
entirety? No.
Yeah.
I do
No.
not think that. That's something I always have to remind myself of too, because I oftentimes fall into a trap of like, well, if this person would just act right or be better or be a certain way, then I could be more productive or happier or whatever it is. And I have to constantly remind myself that it is not my job to change or control other people. And I'm critical, like I can be really critical of other people, and I'll like nitpick the things that really bother me about the way that they act or present themselves or whatever. And I have to be constantly aware of the fact that I don't have control over this human being. Like all I can control is my response to them. And oftentimes when people are really annoying me, like we all have those people, you know, who are just like, oh, they just rub you the wrong way. And when I encounter those, I have to dive into that in myself, because I have to like look at, okay, why does this person like really, like I do not jive with this person. And one of the exercises that I do that is like the hardest thing in the world, and I'll be honest, sometimes I just can't do it. But when I'm really struggling with a particular person, I actually write down a list of our similarities. And it is, oh, like I almost don't recommend doing it, because you immediately see like, oh, that's why that person really bothers me.
You
So
start reaching for similarities, like they like pizza, and you're like, oh, I kind of like pizza. That's the alpha one there.
no, it's like when they, so for example, I don't like the way this person is super controlling or tries to tell me what to do. And it's like, well, why don't I like that? Because I can be that way. And that is like, that's tough. I mean, that just like hits you in the soul and takes a level of humility that is like really hard to handle. I recently did this and I was like, oh.
Yeah, it's not them, it's you.
It's always me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It took me a while to come to the point of view that I couldn't change other people.
Hmm.
And more recently, I think about that. I'm like, it's even hard enough to change myself. How am I going to change other people?
Oh, right. I'm
So
stubborn.
in terms of influence, you still can influence other people.
Hmm.
And also it starts with you influencing yourself and looking for that. There's a technique I recently learned from one of my favorite podcasters, the and, the use of the word and.
Hmm.
So, I agree with you, and so to build on it, or
Hmm.
I'm inclined to agree with you. And here's another way that I've been thinking about it, or that you might want to think about it.
Hmm.
And conjunction,
Replace but with and.
conjunction,
good one.
junction. What's your function?
Ooh,
Yeah.
function.
There it is.
Jules, you're deep. Like the more I get to know you, the deeper it goes.
Oh, yes. It's like an ocean.
Yeah, deep like an ocean.
Yep. We're going
Adam,
swimming.
I am curious to hear more of your perceptions about this topic, or really anything about the show.
Okay, yeah. As far as agreeing with people, I think that I'm, for the most part, like Jules talked, I agree more often than not, and I think because I surround myself with people that have similar interests, thoughts, opinions, things like that. But I think as my nature, I believe that I play devil's advocate quite often, just because more than not, if somebody agrees with me wholeheartedly, I want to dig into why do you understand that so much, or why do you think that so much, and let me either poke holes in my own argument, or understand the other side, or strengthen my own argument. So but I mean, to Jules' point, I want to surround myself with people that I agree with, or in line. If we're all doing the same things, thinking the same way, having the same goals, then we're a whole lot more likely to go in the same direction. And then you can influence those small change that helps us all going in the right direction. Now, at the same time, I have no problem disagreeing with somebody that I care about, that I want to change maybe their action, or maybe explore their opinion a little bit and understand it. And I don't know that you can't change someone. I think with influence, with motivation, and with leadership, you can help guide. I've come from a sports background, and so I wholeheartedly believe in great leadership, in proper communication, motivation, and guidance, especially with like a servant leadership component as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
One of the things I was going to say is I know I can't change anyone, but I have seen me be able to help somebody grow. And like I see that in my personal like mentor mentee type relationships, like the gal that I mentor, like that girl, through our conversations, through everything that we do together, has just like taken off. Like she's growing at an exponential rate. And I know that has a lot to do with the work that we do together. But the deal is there's that willingness there. So if a person is willing and open, then they have the opportunity to grow and to be guided. It's the folks who are not willing, who don't want to hear it, who aren't interested. That's when you kind of run into a wall.
Adam, tell us more about your sports background. You brought that up.
Yeah. Well, I played sport, 3-sport athlete in high school, all sports throughout, elementary school, middle school. And then I had a chance to play football at Pacific Lutheran University under Frosty Westring, Hall of Fame coach. And he brought sports psychology really, for 30 plus years of coaching in that area. And so I really value servant leadership and aligning yourself with the proper motivation, because I think to Jules's point, so maybe we can't necessarily just change people, but what we find when we look behind the curtain is that small little adjustments,
Mm-hmm.
several small little adjustments can completely change over someone in their own mind and how they go forward and all that kind of stuff. So, I took your question and went how I wanted to. Sorry, Ivan.
Good. I agree with the direction. So yeah, but back to sports. Like, can you give an example of a time where you're like, these people, this servant leaders, as you say, was able to overcome a disagreement that was there to move the team forward?
So a experience that happened where a servant leader used his leadership ability to change okay. So I'll use an example of when I took the teachings that I was given at school and brought it to when I was actually coaching. So it's easy to let yourself be impacted by the outcomes of the game or what's going on or the current situation, all that kind of stuff. And that can really play into your mental state currently, right? So if you play a game every snap to whistle, and you're focusing on just that play, because that's really all you can control, right? I can't control last down. I can't control what happens in the fourth quarter. I can't control what I can control right now. And if all the hype up music in the locker room beforehand, all that get up speech that they give you can often be gone on the first snap of the game. So you have to bring that motivation, you have to bring that fire, you have to bring that attitude every single snap. So where I brought that was when I was coaching, we were getting beat at home, and it was one of those games where we were making lots of mistakes. The other team was making lots of mistakes. Nothing was really happening. Lots of stalemate, lots of all that kind of stuff. And the other team ended up scoring, right? I mean, we got into about the second quarter and the other team scored. And, heads go down, hands on hips, very distraught. And I started laughing. I clapped and I cheered. And I said, good, this game was boring anyway. And the players looked at me like, are you nuts? We just gave up a touchdown. We got 4 quarters. Let's concentrate on the next play. Let's bring that forward. And instantly steps get a little bit lighter. Chins up a little bit. You get a little bit more excited. And now I'm ready to play that next play, right? So if you take it in increments that way, I mean, I think you guys have used the eating an elephant one bite at a time analogy in prior episodes. But if you can get in the mindset of having those small bites and then controlling that aspect of it, absolutely. So I think that is a point of servant leadership where I was upset too that we gave up a touchdown and that we're now down. But if you can change that mindset and kind of inspire, then we're all feeling a little bit better about it's not, nobody died. It's not the worst thing in the world. We can come back from this.
So you broke the mind state of defeat by just saying, okay, that was boring. Now it doesn't have to be boring.
Right.
You basically got the whole team to agree that, yeah, okay, it happened. Now it doesn't have to be boring. Right. So we were standing in line at the soccer registration. This was like 7 years ago. So my son would have been about 10. We're standing in line and we get to the front of the line. And they're like, there's no coaches. There's no coaches left. Unless you want to volunteer to be a coach. They looked at me. So I said, I'll do it. I didn't give much thought to it. I was just like, I'll do it. I'll be the coach. And I played soccer and I'd been a business coach. So therefore, right, I should know how to tell 10-year-old boys how to play soccer. Now, luckily in the fall, all of our players were great. And so the problem that we actually had was not beating our opponents by too much. Like there was some rule that if you go ahead by 6 goals, you have to like either take a player out or just dribble around or do something like that. So that was actually the challenge in the fall. But then we returned to spring sports. And the spring, we didn't have our top players. And in the fall, we'd won every single game. And it was almost boring. Like you're just winning so easily. So much winning, too much winning. I'm going to be tired of winning. But in the spring, we were losing every game. Until the last game and this does kind of like fly in the face of what I said about you can't change people. I stopped being egalitarian and kind of democratic about who was going to play what position. And I was such an annoying dad here. I spent the entire game yelling at the kids what to do. But we won the last game. And so I guess I got them to agree. I don't know if that's the message I really want to give here, that you can
Yell at people.
get people to agree by yelling at them and telling them what to do. On that, I want to bring this episode, begin it to close. And I want to invite all of you for a parting shot, closing statement. I want you to think about one of two things. One is an action that you want to take after this conversation as a result of this episode, or a person that you have in mind that maybe you have a disagreement with right now, that you could remedy that and become more in an agreement mode with that person. We start with our guest as far as parting shots, an action you're going to take or a person you're going to approach.
No, that's a good call out. I like that challenge. It's something that I'll have to search a little bit, because yeah, I think, and I alluded to it a little bit, but with the political environment, I'm not going to get into that at all. But excuse me.
There it is.
And I will look for motivation and understanding so that I can be a better friend, neighbor, coworker, person in that person's life, so that we can have open and honest conversation about maybe trickier issues.
Jules, what about you? What's your parting shot?
It's more of a habit that I need to get into, which is letting go of that need to be right, which doesn't actually detract from me ultimately like getting what I want, and just really like learning to lean into the disagreement and actually try to understand the other person, not just try to understand why they're wrong. So that's something that I'm just going to be working on, habitual stuff.
Got it. Jacob?
I'm going to give my time up to Adam to talk about his podcast. Parting shots wise, in regards to arguments and disagreements and all that stuff, is just avoid them if you can. And if not, then you probably don't need to be in that conversation anyway. But yeah, Adam, where can we listen to the podcast?
Oh, great. Thank you. Well, we have the PowerFallProject.com, or actually, excuse me, www.powerfallproject.com. Also on Instagram, and then anywhere you listen to podcasts, we're on iTunes or Apple Podcasts, whichever your flavor. Spotify, Amazon Music, we're on iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts. Anyway, all the places where you can find podcasts. The website will take you there. And we just dropped our Halloween episode, which is just all top 5 things, all Halloween, just talking about stories and fun stuff there. And then next week we are doing 5 people that we'd like to have a beer with, alive or dead, just what that would look like. So please join us. Thanks.
Here's what I'm taking on. My manager just gave me an idea to ask my clients what's important to them. And I felt like I do that normally, but I haven't been explicitly doing that. So in terms of agreeing with friends, and I consider most of my clients friends, ask them what's important and then agree with them that it's important. So I'm taking that on.
Nice.
Agree.
It's funny because when you think about the people you hang out with or the people you don't like, we tend to hang out with people that we agree with. And we tend to not hang out with people we don't agree with. But in life, because we have to get along with all sorts of people, learning how to and being focused on agreeing is really a magic way to agree with friends and influence people. with that, I want to thank you, Adam, for spending some time with us and being a part of this conversation about conversations. Jules and Jacob, as always, and all of you out in podcast land, our friends, our colleagues, the people we know and the people we don't yet know. I want to thank all of you for being a part of this conversation about conversations.